Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to Real Life Guitars Workshop. I'm Sam, and this is another day, another rainy day, and it's still not quite November, so I just came in here and I'm sort of slightly boiled. Anyway, enough of that. Been an interesting couple of days. Sort of challenging in that I've had a couple of customers who weren't 100% happy with what I'd done, and this is from people who bought guitars that I was selling. So I had to spend a bit of time making sure that I got that right for them, and I hopefully have resolved the things to everyone's satisfaction. But I don't know about you in your line of business, but certainly for me, people being happy with what I do is the most important thing of all. So if I get something wrong in that, I hate it more than possibly even more than you do as the customer. So it's been a bit challenging because even though I'm really appreciative that people, oh bloody hell, I thought I'd set that to stun. Hang on a sec. Even though it's great to get feedback. Right. Good. So that's really good. So the first one I gave a partial refund, a generous refund, because if the frets on that particular guitar weren't good enough, then I made a mistake and hold my hands up to it. And the other one with a crackly knob, as it were, what I did was I whizzed out to the post office in town and put a can of compressed air. I had a couple spare. Can of compressed air in the post, and the gentleman's got it this morning, and it's happy and it's worked, so he's happy with that. That's great. So it's interesting because I won't lie and say that getting some difficult feedback isn't hard. It is. I hate it in one level, and another level I like it because I want to be able to put it right, which you don't get the chance to do if people just sit on it and kind of resent it. So I encourage anybody who buys from me to let me know if it isn't right, and I will do my utmost to put it right. With the point of view that cost is not the first thing. And then, by contrast, this morning I had Colin call me, the owner of the Fender Modern Player Telecaster, which I set up the other day. You may have seen the video, and he rang this morning and was absolutely thrilled with how it plays. So it's that kind of ups and downs of things. So I guess it's learned from what didn't work out. Make sure I check guitars a little bit more carefully so that I don't get into that situation. So learn from that, but also a nice timely reminder that actually what I'm doing seems to work, and I'm certainly got some very happy customers with what I've done, which is great. So a bit up and downy. Wedding ring, Ninja wedding ring, and then I got an interesting one just now with a customer I just sold a guitar to, who contacted me back and said, "Oh, is the hard case coming separately?" And he said the listing said there was a hard case, and I've just done a quick check on the listing, and it doesn't mention a hard case. So I'm going to do a thorough check and see what's happened there. But funnily enough, immediately, bizarrely, I kind of thought I'd made the mistake, so I have to remember not to assume that all the time. Anyway, well, whatever happens, we'll get that resolved as well. So just also sold this morning a vintage, no, not a vintage, a the Rally gold top, which I bought new actually, and I bought it new to see what it was like. So just found a willing buyer for that. Actually, somebody who wanted it from the outset, which is my good friend Malcolm. So Malcolm, if you're watching this, thank you for taking that one off my hands. Nice guitar. I just found myself not playing it, so it's pretty much brand new set up, so I had to go. So I'm going to be a little bit ruthless about not holding on to so many guitars. Currently I've got about 10 or 12 in my personal playing stash, and it's a little bit excessive. Anyway, so what do we have today? We have an interesting old thing. I got this from Cashconverters, and I'm going to take off the price tag because it's not polite to do that. But actually, it was reasonably priced, which is nice to find. It's a vintage V100. By the way, if the place looks a mess down here, it is, folks. Anyone who says they've got a messy workshop like me, it's a mess because Morris just went for a climb on the shelves and he managed to knock everything off for me. So later on, yeah. So we got here is a vintage V100 in black, and actually, all told, structurally, it's absolutely rock solid and in good condition. There's not many marks on this at all. Look, the bridge is going to fall off. However, there are some interesting things in this guitar which kind of explain to me why it was the price it was. First of all, it's not new by any means, so it's been well used. The frets are quite flattened, and they bear some evidence of having been either filed or worn. I think they've been filed sometime in the past, so they've been dressed and perhaps not really profiled particularly well. But anyway, they're fairly worn. They're not overly worn, but they've had a good play, which is not a problem. But the interesting bit, there's a couple of interesting telltale bits. So all the hardware is quite worn, so it looks good. It looks sort of used, well used, and it's clearly, you can see on the hardware where the resting hand has taken off the gold stuff. Hardware is made in Korea by the looks of it, so I don't know if that's standard for these vintages anyway. So what have we got? We've got a set neck vintage V100, pretty much as you'd expect it to be. It has nothing that jumps out as being remarkable or unusual, except these aren't the normal pickups that I've seen, tuners that I've seen them come with, although they still may well be Wilkinson, because I just bought a set of Wilkinsons the other day for another guitar which are identical to this. So they may be Wilkinsons. I'm not sure if I've seen these V100s come with these. In my experience, they tended to be with the plastic edged ones, and they tend to be the vintage style Clouson tuners. But anyway, these are I checked. There's nothing wrong at all with these. They're very positive and good, so I suspect they're Wilkinson. But the interesting bit is when you get down here, and we have two different kinds of pickups, neither of which are the original. So what's going on? Well, this is a G&B, I think it is. It's a Korean-made pickup, which, if you do a bit of research online, actually doesn't have too bad a review. Some people quite like them. Apparently they come stock in many of the PRS guitars from the Far East. But this has the letter R stamped on the back with the logo, and I'm wondering if that's supposed to be the rhythm pickup. I guess what will let me know, I'll have another look, and if the wire comes out this end, it probably should be in this position. Anyway, it's currently there, and it's not too bad a pickup. This one is unknown quantity, and it doesn't have, it's just designed as an open pickup. I can't see any branding on it whatsoever. And the question that somebody has already asked, and I would ask, is why would you, what would be the reason for taking out the very good Wilkinson humbuckers from one of these? And I guess there's only two things you would do. One is you'd replace them with better, which I don't think these could be classed as better, and I'm not really sure. I might actually go and string it up. I might do the fret leveling and set it all up and play with these for a bit, just to get a sense of what they sound like before I barge in and chuck some Wilkinsons back in there. But the Wilkinsons are a known quantity, and they're really nice sounding. So we've got unusual pickups, and then the only other thing really is at the other end there's a kind of a bit of telltale sign that the nut's been off and stuck back on, and I think the end here is a little bit rounded off or something, but somebody's had that off. That's no big deal. Depending on the condition of it, I might put another one on. More than anything, probably my main concern with this guitar would be, if I just try to point you downwards, my main concern, if any, will be with the frets. And I won't know whether it plays okay until I've done some fret leveling, tried it out. Now if I do that, set it up to play and just give it a bit of a road test, then what I'll find is two things. One is I'll find out what the pickups sound like, and if they're any good, and if they're comparable to the Wilkinsons. And I have another guitar, the Avon guitar inside, which has two Wilkinsons to test the sound against. And also I'll know if the frets are good enough to continue using, because my only concern when you come to any frets of this age, that you're starting to approach a marginal height of the frets to do decent fret leveling on. So it's better that we're able to do the precision fret leveling with the neck in playing position, because it means I can take off as little metal as I need to get these into a good condition. But we do have a couple of deep grooves in here which may ultimately be the decider for this. So I won't know until I've done it, restrung it, played it for a bit, and in truth that's going to cost me, will it cost me a set of strings, or do I have a reasonably good quality? I think I might have a reasonably good quality set of strings that I can use, in which case I could probably get some good playing life out of them before I end up having to trash them. And I think actually I'll use these, and I think these came off my blue, that's that thing called AV6, vintage AV6. So it's a Strat guitar, so these should just about be long enough to restring a whatever this thing's called, Les Paul copy. Sorry, I'm just getting used to this new camera fixture. It sounds technical. It's an old chisel on a microphone stand with a lot of Velcro and stuff going on. But okay, so what I want to do with this guitar, I'll take some bits off, because ultimately I'm going to want to give it all a clean, so I can get a shot of the pick guard and things like that are just going to get in the way of cleaning it. And I will also take the back plates off and just leave it open, because I'm possibly going to want to change the pickups out. I'll just check through the wiring. A bit of grime behind there. I'll take the truss rod cover off as well. I think a little bit down the line I'll also take the tuners off and give them a clean. Or will I do that first? Might as well, hadn't I, really? So I'm going to start from a clean guitar. The sequence in which I do things has changed a bit since starting to pretty much level all the time with the precision tunable tool. Used to be strip everything down, clean everything up, and then go on to the passive neck fret leveling, but it's changed a bit. Now, before I do a total all over clean, I'm going to do the fret leveling, and I'm going to do the testing the pickups thing, so that I know the full scale of what's going to be needed to make this right or perfect the way I want it to be. So I will just give it a quick once over with some of this nice solvent naphtha. Mainly to get some of this residual goo off it, just so it feels a little bit cleaner to handle, because you don't know, no idea where any of these things have come from. No offence, teenagers, but bedroom DNA can be quite powerful stuff. Should know, I've been a teenage boy once. It won't stand up. There's little bits of residue of sort of polishing goo underneath the scratch plate fixture, so it's somebody's obviously given it a clean with some polish of some kind. But it's in good nick body-wise, that's nice. Won't be a problem removing the CashConverter sticker at some point. So it's just a cosmetic and a hygienic clean really to begin with, and particularly I'm going to scrub a little bit on the neck, and I'll do it again later on when we've come to the sort of final clean up, but this is just going to get some of the finger cheese out of here, and we all make it. I'm not criticising anyone. I'd grab this camera, who knows. So there's a lot of goo in here, and realistically I'd probably want to get in there with the toothbrush to get it from underneath the frets. Somebody on Facebook commented that it had some big gaps under the frets. I have to say it's nothing unusual. Most guitars have quite a bit of unevenness where the frets sit on the fingerboard. It's not uncommon for you to be able to get a knife blade under most guitars. In fact, it's rare that there's an absolute perfect match. And it isn't a problem really, as long as the frets are fixed in place by the glue and they're sort of tang the way it seats. There is a lot of crap coming off here. This will be a good first step, clean. What I'll do is I'll do a little bit of work on this, and then I'll go and just do that double checking on that listing to make sure I wasn't shortchanging customer with a case. I know I was thinking about putting some of my guitars in cases because I've accumulated a fair few, but I don't think I can't remember or can't see that I specified that one was in a case, and I haven't had any other conversations about it, so I'll just triple check because I don't want to be saying to somebody they've made a mistake until I'm absolutely certain that I haven't. Okay, so provisionally cleaner. I'm not going to oil it or anything right now because I'm going to, when it comes to fret leveling, I'm going to put some masking tape over it to protect it, and any oil on there would make that difficult to stick. I don't have a set way of measuring these things. It is largely to do with feel. Right now they would play nicely because there's enough life in them, but say, as I said, I'm concerned about making sure that once we've done some fret leveling work, which it needs, and that's before I've even checked about whether in fact they're even or not. The fret leveling in this case would be as much to remove these grooves and the flat spots as it would to take care of unevenness. Do both, obviously. Okay. The other thing I noticed, by the way, on this is this is how the bridge was positioned on the guitar, which is fine. It can be both ways, but it happened to be this way. And I noticed that, I don't know how well you see this, I noticed that this and this one were jammed up against the stop, as well as this one and this one. Only these two were slightly adjusted back, and this is bad news here, because if these need to go any further forward that way, there isn't any room for them to go because they're up against the stop. These can turn around. You can take these out and spin them around to gain an extra, I guess it's about 2 millimeters of movement in that direction if you need it. What concerns me slightly is that I keep seeing this on these guitars. Now right now the intonation doesn't matter particularly for this part of the job, so I'm not going to get hung up about it. But towards the end I'm pretty certain that I'll need to spin those saddles around. And as I say, I think I've set up about 6 or 7 of these, 6 or 7 of these vintage V100s, and it is a repeating theme, and that interests me because it makes me wonder if there is a fundamental incorrect placing of the bridge, which you'd think would be impossible on such a, you know, well-respected mass volume manufactured guitar. So I don't know, but we'll see. This is indicating the problem exists in this one as well. It could be that somebody's just tweaked them wrong without really thinking what they're doing, but I'm going to be interested to know. So what I'm putting in is this dummy set of strings, or trashy set of strings, second hand, and I'm doing it because I'm going to sacrifice them and bin them later on. What happened there? Okay. I'm going to hope that these all fit as a result of them coming off the strap. I think they came off. I could be wrong. They may have come off. Les Paul. In which case they should also still fit. It's the other way round that's the problem. If you try to string a Strat with strings that have come off of Les Paul, you'll suddenly find you won't reach probably the B and the E. Ooh, this is tricky. I'm struggling even to get to anywhere with this one. If I have to, I'll use a sacrificial new set of strings, but that's like £4 down the drain. I don't really wish to do. I mean, the best is that I can use them again as sort of workshop strings, but it's an unfortunate expense. I don't think this is going to hold. I'm just kind of hoping that it might just catch. Nah, it's just pinging off. So let's have a look and see if actually any of these others would actually fit, or am I just wasting my time altogether? I may have a spare one, you see, if there's one that's unusually short. Annoying. Come on, get to the same length. Right, length. Actually, these appear to fit. We know that one doesn't. Chuck it away. Drink coffee. Let's try the D. I do have some spares which I'll bring into action if it can save me from using a whole set, which I obviously wrong hole. Hang on. I prefer to do that, obviously. No, we're not getting there. Damn. Waste of time. Right, it's going to have to be I'm going to put a new set on, and fair enough, I'll probably play it for a while. I'm not in a rush to get this thing on the market, so if I string it with new strings, it gives me a couple of weeks of decent quality playing. I'm going to use these 9s because that's what I prefer on them. Got some more coming in the post because that was my last set. I'm going to need to take these off and on, so let me just get my order of events right here. Let's rewind and go back to beginnings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mask this off first, and then I'm going to mark it up with marker pen ready for the fret leveling, and then I'm going to string it. Then I will fret level it, and then I will take the strings off, then I'll do the polishing, then I'll put the strings back on. So it's going to get an on and off the strings, which isn't great for them, but it's okay just because for now this is how it has to be. So, sorry about the noise. So first off, let's get some masking done, and this is just a bit of a boring process, but it's really important that you do it. And obviously you're going to run out of room to do single pieces of tape, and you're going to have to cut some specially made strips, which I do with a cutting board and a straight edge, so that I kind of know from experience how much I need to make. So I'm going to do that in a moment, and the idea is that we're going to just pinch around the back when we've made these tabs, so it helps it when it's time to take it off. And all the way through the whole of this process, it's going to protect the fingerboard, which is not bad at all. It's a nice rosewood, so why wouldn't you take care of it? You know, you can do certain jobs with one of those fret protector strips, but they can be fiddly to use if you have to do the whole neck. And to be honest, I've not found, although I have done some spot levelling of frets, it's not really a very good way of doing it, because fret levelling is a relative beast, so it's not an absolute thing. And if you do, because it's relative, if you do one thing or level in one area, you then create unevenness across, relative to the rest of the frets nearby. So you really can't do things on your own. It's better you do the whole lot. Although it is possible to improve guitars by using a spot method. You just got to be conscious of what you're doing, and you've got to be prepared to keep going back and testing it for level, and then keep working on it. But I think if you're not calm and collected and confident in what you're doing, you can get into a fair mess fairly quickly, where you've worn down a fret or two, possibly irreparably, which means you really kind of you leave yourself no option but to refret the guitar, which, you know, is an expensive place to arrive at if you don't need to get there. But both in terms of time and materials if you do it yourself, but also certainly in terms of cost if you're paying somebody like me to do it for you. So I have my 4 bits of tape. Now I know from experience that 2 pieces cut into thirds will be enough for the small frets, and 2 strips cut in half will be enough for the wider ones. And so I'll just sort of go into autopilot here. When you have 24 frets, you need actually a little bit more cut even thinner, but that's how it is. It doesn't have to be exact. What matters more than anything is that it's a straight edge, because it then nestles up against the fret accurately and leaves no gaps. If you've got a snaky edge, you'll leave exposed bits of fingerboard, which can then get damaged by sandpaper or whatever else you're doing. I just discovered something that's annoying me. I put some Velcro on the front of this bench to hold something the other day, and right now that is catching me. I'm just going to cut this then into 4 quarters, again roughly. It's not precision, but what it does is it gives me a palette of tape, which I can then, by the way, I'm going to take off this Velcro, which is annoying me, and stick it somewhere else where the sun won't shine. There you go. Always good to have Velcro, the hook part of the Velcro. God, it's so strong, this glue. I stick it other places where I know I can use it. Right now, it's not there. Okay, not there. You never know when you might need it. Right. Blah blah blah. Okay, so onwards and upwards. So picking bits of tape off my cutting board, I can now fire away, and where the things only just meet up, I can put a double over the middle, make it stronger, I just keep going until I get to the thinner bits, and I shift over to the thinner bits. Right, so I'm going to do this, finish off that, prep the neck, and I'll come back to you for the next bit. So, having put the masking tape on, having strung the guitar, I'm now just squeezing out the slack, although I may end up replacing these strings. I might as well treat them as if I'm going to play the guitar, which I will for a bit, while I ascertain whether it's what I've done works, or whether it needs, perhaps even at the worst outcome, or the most expensive for me, refretting, or whether it's needs some other kind of work doing. But so I'm taking the stretch out. I'm just going to take a tuning quickly off this amp. And so I can do the stretch again, and then I'll stop at that point and get on. And the getting on bit will be the sequence of events then by which I do the fret leveling. So I will set the nut slots to the correct height, presuming they're not. I will adjust the action of the bridge to an action that's ideal for playing that I want, and then I will check the neck relief. That's a bit, that nut's not in great shape. Now, if, by the way, right now I decide this nut is no good, I may need to replace it at first before I do any other work. So there we have the guitar masked off. Notice I've masked all of this off. People say, well, you don't need to use all of that tape, do you? And my answer is, well, I do, because I just want to make sure that I don't get sandpaper on these bits of the finish. Why not? Why not preserve the condition? And also I cover the pickups so that dust and crap doesn't get into there while I'm doing it. Okay, so as I say, next step will be, sorry, I haven't got this worked out yet. Next step will be to set the nut, the nut slot, so that the height over the first fret is good. As I said, I'm a little bit concerned about a couple of these. There's a bit too much room in that one. It's not a problem, but it's not ideal. It's kind of got two little grooves. Basically, it's been cut badly. Pulling it out of the way, I could probably just adjust it. Anyway, so I'm going to set the ideal action over the first fret, set the height down here, check the sorry, I'll do it the other way. I'll set the action down here, check the relief, and then set the nut slots to the correct height, and then I'll do the fret leveling. Okay, sorry, I'm not looking at that. Okay, so I'll come back once I've done those. Oh, what will I do? No, I'm going to take a break for a minute, and then I'll come back and do those things, and we'll get, in the next chunk, we'll get straight off into doing the fret leveling, which is the kind of interesting part, really. And then after that, we'll be in a position to ascertain whether this is a goer the way it is, or whether we need to, for example, replace the nut, and or whether it's a refret needed. Great thing about a refret is it's very expensive for me time-wise, but it makes a brand new guitar effectively. But it's not economic. It doesn't make economic sense to buy a second-hand guitar like this and refret it, because I won't get my time and expertise back. On the other hand, if somebody came to me with their worn-out guitar which they love and asked me to refret it, then it does make economic sense for me as a business, because I make money from doing that. But I won't get it back if I do it to make this saleable. So it's one of those things, you can never quite see the frets on a guitar, particularly if this is Cashconverters rather than eBay. eBay I can judge a bit better, usually because the photographs are clearer. This was hard to tell, but it's halfway. It's not too bad. So I'm hopeful that we'll get a good playing action out of it. Okay, see you in a minute. And we're back. Right, so onwards and upwards. So the job is, let's set the action. I just did a double check, by the way, and that my customer was right. I had added the case to the listing later on. I think it had been up for about 3 weeks or something, and then I thought, I've got a pile of cases here that I could do with moving along, and I thought I'd add one to the listing to make it more attractive, and then completely forgot about it. So thankfully my customer reminded me, so I will send that on to them, which it is mighty annoying that I forgot about it. I suppose it's because I so rarely have a case in the sale. Usually in fact I almost never pack a guitar in a hard case and send it, so I think I was just caught out by the unusualness of it. Anyway, no harm done, it'll be on its way. In fact, it's down there, nice black cat or something. It'll be on its way, and I'll have a bit more space in the workshop. Now I cannot get these specs clean. Just 1 second, I'm going to try clean these. Hold on. Amazing that worked. Naphtha spectacle cleaner par excellence. So, okay, let's do the biz. Right. So first of all, I'm going to set an action on this vintage V100 that I am happy to play, and it's quite simple to do with a tunematic bridge. So just having a quick look at where it's set at the moment. It's about just under 2.5 millimeters, which for me is way too high for a guitar like this. So I'm going to take it down by screwing it in. Now we'll go down to 1.5 on both ends just for now. Screwing it in, 1.5, maybe a little less than 1.5 on the treble side. Okay, so that's my optimum ideal action set. Now what sounds like buzzing, in fact, is typical cheap cheap tunematic bridge rattle. So I'm going to cure that with some foam when the time comes. I'm not going to worry about it for now. What I'm interested in is, do the notes play? Now that is a bit of fret buzz. So anyway, what it tells us is that the action, when it's set nice and low like that, you have some problems with the frets there, which is what we expect anyway. What we can do is, while we're at it, is just support that, get a fret rocker out, and you can just check it. Even though the neck is slightly relieved, I hardly any, but it's got a little bit of a curve in it. This will still, the frets should be relatively level compared relative to each other. So the fret rocker should not register any rocking when you try it over a set of 3 frets at a time. And so far it's not showing up anything major, which is quite good. And there's some. And you'll hear it as a rattle or a rocking noise. So there is a bit of unevenness, but that's what we'll be taking care of a bit more. Somewhere on an average neck there's usually a significant piece of high fretage. It's not really important doing it this way to go through and mark all these things off. I mean, we can do it. If you're doing it for the first time, you might be advised to go through and mark off the really high frets, just as a point of information really, because if you're new to it, what's quite good, for example, if that's really high, which is, oh blimey, that's massive. Right, so I'm predicting that this one is high. Right. So, for example, you might go through and just mark off this whole fret and say to yourself, I know this is a particularly bad one, so I'm marking on the paper. Now, when you're fret leveling all the frets at once, you don't really need to do that marking, but it's nice as an indicator for you. We'll come back to that in a minute. So I've got the action set where we want it here. I'm going to just have a quick look down the neck and see how it's shaped. It's very, very, very flat. There's a tiny bit of relief in it. You can do it by eyeballing it. You can get a straight edge if you want. You can get a, where's it gone? You can get a tremolo, so many words, capo, put it on there, and then put it on the first fret, and then you can press down on the last fret, and around about the middle eighth, or just physically in the middle, you see how much of a gap there is under there, and in this case it's about 3/4 of a millimetre. It's okay, it's enough. It's hardly any on the top edge, but often there's an unevenness between the amount of relief on either edge, which kind of tells you that there's a splay in the neck, which is common. Keep finding it. What I also have found with V100s is that they can, well, not just V100s, but any set neck Les Paul guitar, the truss rod extends the whole length of the neck. But it doesn't really have much action. It doesn't really do that much here, because this is from about the 13th fret onwards, this becomes a much thicker piece of timber, and then it's also clamped or glued solidly into the side of another bigger piece of timber, so it's very difficult for this part of it to flex. So what you can often get, can't see it too badly on this one, but what you can often get is a sort of straight followed by a curve, and that makes a complex shape to do anything with. But as it happens, it doesn't appear to be suffering too much from that on this one. Ideally, if you're leveling frets with the neck in a curved position, you want a similarly curved shaped tool to do it. If you don't have such a tool, what is typical, what you might well do, is you might use truss rod to flatten the neck so there is no relief at all, and you can test it visually. You can test it with a steel rule edge, or you can test it by measuring the gap, seeing that there's no movement in the string. You want it, so if you level the frets that way, it's fairly accurate, it's pretty good, and then when you put the strings back on and you tighten it all up under load, it pulls the neck into the curve that it wants. It's only minor, it's only very slight, but your frets should still be relative. The reason this version is slightly more accurate is because it not only pulls the neck into the right shape when it's playing, which it would happen anyway if you leveled them flat, you'd still pull them, they would still be relatively level relative to each other, but the one thing that doing it with the neck under full load is that there's a compression effect on the neck, and I can't tell you exactly what it does, but it makes the frets slightly different. It makes them sit slightly differently microscopically than if they were just passive and flattened out by using the truss rod to do so. And all I can tell you is that if you can level your frets with the neck with its correct playing relief into it, with the action all set the way you want it, then what you get is just a fractionally more accurate leveling. But also, probably the biggest advantage is it means that you can test as you go, and because the strings are on, and you can stop at the point where you get nice clean notes, and so you never have to go any further than you absolutely need. So guitar strung, fully set up fret leveling is really advantageous when you're not sure you've got an awful lot of enough spare fret metal. You've got new frets, you can be a little bit more cavalier and use another method. If you're sort of marginal in terms of material, you want to take as little as possible, then the strung up leveling under slight curved conditions is a better way to do it. It's also the only way to do it, by the way, if you've got a neck that even when you take the strings off doesn't flatten out. So a neck with a permanent kind of curve in it. Some necks you'll find that you'll take the strings off and they still don't go flat. You have no way of fret leveling that unless you use a curved tool that will follow the radius, follow the relief, the curve of the relief. So that's another way, or a situation in which that's an advantage. Okay, so next step of this is that what have we got happening around here? We want to get everything, we've got the action here okay, the relief is okay, and we're now going to just check and see what the first fret action is doing on these strings. It's slightly difficult to do them all at once because you've got them all in different places. So technically you might have to take one string off and dig underneath another one, and that changes the load on the neck slightly. But let's begin with the low E over the first fret. So you can see there, this 0.3 isn't what's the word? It's too thick. So there's less than a 0.3 of a millimetre. Now I tend to aim for about 0.3, so if there's less than 0.3, I'm impressed. The A string is playing, and I wiggle it around, which means there's a bit over 0.3. The D string is playing, and I can see if I press down there's quite a bit of air. G is playing, B is playing, and the E just about plays. So we've got an interesting thing here, which means there's a little bit there is, first of all, it's uneven, the height over the first fret from all these strings. We can't really do an awful lot. The question is, what do we aim for? Let's go down and find what this E string is actually on, because it's less than 0.25. Let's go to 0.15. It will operate, the guitar will operate at about 0.1. So for example, if you were to fret capo, guitar plays, right? You check what the actual action is over the first fret with a capo on, it's about 0.2, something like that. It's very, very, very slight. Obviously, the higher the bridge is, the more that's going to be. But on an action of an action at the end fret here, in my terms, of 1.5 millimeters, then what you tend to get over here is about between 1.5 and 2. So you can get away with very low, and a capo guitar plays very well. So 0.2 is not too low. However, it's a bit low. It doesn't give you much margin for error. So this is playing on 0.2. Maybe it's 0.25 is where it's stopping at. Yeah, it's just over 0.25, so it's between 0.25 and 0.3. Now either have a choice. I either go across all of them, set them all to 0.25, or I leave that one slightly low and set all the others to 3. And the question is, do you want an even feel, and are you comfortable having 0.25? What happens here is that most of the time on a guitar set, with other things being equal, i.e. a bit of relief in the neck, a fairly low fast action set at the bridge, you still find lots of guitars have very high or shallow cut slots here, which give you quite considerable action over the first fret. It's quite common, you'll get a guitar from the shop and it might have as much as 1 millimeter over the first fret. That, in my experience, it causes a lot of problems. Both it makes it monstrously hard to fret chords at this end, and individual notes and notes in chords that you press down at this end tend to go sharp because you're pressing so hard. Now this guitar currently doesn't have that problem. It's ultra low, which is great. The question is, do I make an adjustment so that they're all the same, or do I accept that this one's lower than all the rest and just work off 0.3 on all the others? I might just do that. I think I'll cautiously stick with 0.3, knowing that this one is between 0.25 and 0.3. So I'll aim for 0.3, and here's what we'll do. So once I've decided my target, you could make it 0.4. It's not science. It's not rocket science. 0.4 will feel easier than 0.6. 0.7 will feel hard. 0.8 will start causing intonation problems. 1mm, you'll notice that it'll feel like it's hard to get the guitar in tune when you play open chords. And lots of people have come to me with exactly that problem, and sorting the nut fixes it. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to aim for a 0.3 across all of these. I'm using a set of files here which are actually gauged for a set of 10 strings, but I tend to use 10s when I'm working on 9 gauge strings, strangely enough, because I want them slightly larger. I don't want to, first of all, I don't want to constrain the customer to only using 9s, so a 10 set will allow them to use 10s. And also, if you think about it, all guitars come ready to take anything pretty much as heavy as they go. A guitar like this will comfortably take an 11 set, so they're already cut for 11. So the fact is, if they're cut for 11 and you put 9s in them, they're not going to rattle around. They work perfectly well, as long as it's a properly cut slot. So as it happens, I'm going to go midway and set for 10s, which will give us perfect action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off these 3. Now, yes, that changes the geometry of the neck slightly, but what I know about this is I'm half supporting the neck down the middle here, so it's kind of neutral in a way. It's only under a very small amount of gravity. I know that when I lift it up onto its playing position, this gap will microscopically increase. I also know that when I fret level it, it's going to microscopically increase too. So if I'm aiming for 0.3 and I get 0.3, I know that realistically, by the time I've put it into the playing position and by the time I've fret leveled and I'm playing it after fret leveling, it'll be probably somewhere between 0.35 and 0.4. So that's conservative, so you don't need to panic about going too low. So I just check my string that I'm working on. So here's the D. I sort of get an eyeball, I can see the gap. It's not a lot, right? And I get the nut file that I want for that. Hoik the string out of the way. I'm keeping the tension if I can. You know, you might as well kind of put some more tension back in just to keep it under as much as you can. So I am going to cut this slot now. Where's my thing? I'm going to do a slight cut in here, and I'm rocking it slightly because I don't want it to be the ultra tight. I don't want it to have gaps or, you know, double edges, but I want it to be not bindingly tight. And then I check it again. Does it play? Yes. Is there a gap? Yes. Come back, do a little bit more, and I'm tilting downwards, not any set amount, just a sort of an amount that I'm used to. Do a little bit of cutting. Try again. And a bit more. So I'm looking out or listening out for and feeling when we reach a point where it buzzes a little bit, because that will tell us that we've kind of reached down to that 0.3 gap above the fret. Still a little bit of space. Notes playing cleanly. So of course the secret here is not to rush, not to overstrain and put too much force into it. Nearly there, very close. Again, if we're going to use anything as a guide, well, we might as well use the kind of buzzing as a guide, and we'll stop as soon as we can't get a clean ring. That's about it for me. Then the next one, so we tune this first one back. It's all out of tune really, isn't it? Okay, so now we change files. I'm going for the next one down, the A file. Check the gap, check it's 0.3. Whoa, we're almost on 0.3 to be going on with. I'm just going to do the lightest to pass through there. I know that this one also has a kind of double slot in it, which could be a problem. And let's just hope that sits nice and it sits in okay, but I'm going to stop there. That's good enough. Tune it up. I'm tuning the wrong thing. Sorry. A mental block for a moment there. Okay, and now onto the E string. Again, I think we're going to leave that, so that's fine. So now we're back. That's the bottom 3 done. And for the top 3, I'm just going to use literally the top 2. Sorry, the middle 2, or the B and the G. I'm going to use. I don't want to go to the thinnest string. I'm not going to use the 10 because I don't want it too tight. So again, back to the principle, looking for the 0.3. Quite a bit of room on the G there. So lift that out of the way, find where the blade is, and a little bit of gentle cutting. Again, checking again. It's okay. Again, it's a matter of, it's easy to do. You can see with the shadows, you can hear with the note, you can press down and see it. There's movement downwards. So all those little things tell you when you're reaching the correct gap. And this, in my experience, if there were one thing to change the way a guitar feels, okay, we're there already. If there's one thing to change the way a guitar feels, it's this. Doing the nut slots. That will completely lighten up the way it plays. It'll suddenly become effortless at this end. From something that might have taken you some serious effort. Okay, so I'm now working on the B, the 0.13. Not much to do on this, so just gentle little filing. See some fresh air still. You take your time with this. If you make a mistake, you can do one of two things. You can either replace the nut, so it's always probably good to have a spare one hanging around, and if you don't, or it's a minor thing, you can make a temporary or a sort of homemade repair by filling the slot, filling the slot with some baking soda. Okay, we're nearly there. So with some baking soda and some very, very low viscosity super glue, and it makes a cement which will fill in the gap. And then you can recut the slot if needs be. Okay, so this is very, very close to the mark. I don't really want to do anything to that. Alright, so there are my nut slots cut to give me the action of 0.3, close to 0.3. Admittedly, the low E is a tiny bit lower than that, but we've now got very close to 0.3 over the over the first fret, which gives us a lovely low action there. That, as I say, that transforms how the guitar feels almost more than anything. And here's the fun bit. Here's where the precision fret leveling starts. Let me just get another note out of here to make sure we're as close to tune as we can be. Okay, so close to tuning. Now here comes the fun bit. We're looking for, and I might do a bit of alteration here. We are looking for, what's this? It's too harsh. We're looking for a special tool and a bit of special, self-adhesive sandpaper. And I've got 400 grit, which is nice and fine here. So I'm just going to push this off to one side and show you what's going to happen with this. So my tool for levelling these frets is, believe it or not, a truss rod. And this truss rod basically is a rod with a bar welded either end, or brazed, or whatever it is. And the way, as a truss rod, when I turn this, it deforms the flat bar and gives you a curve. If I slack it off, it pretty much comes back to flat. So you can see that by bending this, I can get a curve, and if I can map it exactly to the curve of the neck, then I can level frets if I've got some sandpaper on the bottom. And that's what this is all about. So I'm going to pull off this used bit of sandpaper and get some new stuff on, and I'm going to use a low small number, low grade caliber category, what's the word I'm looking for, gauge, not very scratchy thing. Sick of all the words you have to find. It isn't just about age, it's just bored saying so many words. Okay, so what I've got here is some sandpaper with backing, even though it's quite sticky because there's some still left on there. Actually, what I'll do is I'm just going to quickly wipe this clean. I want a clean surface for this. I don't want any bumps sticking up. So I will just wipe off any of the excess glue on here. This truss rod, by the way, came from an Affinity Squire Stratocaster that I bought a while back for parts, where some previous owner had tried to cut the headstock off, and he had got as far as slicing into the truss rod and quitting. I think his hacksaw gave out at that point. So I got it. I ended up using the neck. The neck went for some experiments, some refretting experiments. The truss rod was used for demonstrating how truss rods work for a bit, and then became this tool. And the headstock was a present for Jean Rolfe, a friend of mine and an old neighbour of mine when I lived in Wales. So, a bit like the Chinese and food, all parts of the beast were used. Nothing was wasted. That's not racist, by the way. I saw it on a TV programme the other night where Chinese people were saying that that's one of the things they do, is use all of the parts of the animal when it comes to food. They don't waste anything. So I'm just drawing a little mark on there to know where my the length of this piece needs to be. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this right off so that I know that this strip is ready sized for this game. Because then what I need to do is there's a couple of ways I could do this. I'm going to peel back, I think in this case I'll peel back the stuff. This is it's called Rhino Dry. It's really good stuff. It's not that expensive, and it's made in Portugal and sold by a guy who, I can't remember his name now, his ID, but it's an eBay vendor who does this sort of stuff, and radius blocks and other luthier tools, and they're really, really useful stuff. So I'm just going to place this down as close to, my eyes are not very good, close to the edge of this as possible. I'm just going to press down for a minute, and then I'm going to switch it around and cut along the edge of this, and I'm basically trying to save material. I don't want to waste loads of this, and I only need the thinnest of strips to get this job done. So I'm just going to hold it down, slice along the edge of the truss rod, and hey presto, I can fold that back down, reuse that, not wasted anything, and hey presto, I have myself a nicely equipped piece of sandpaper on the truss rod. And if I want to, I can just be really anal about it and go down the edge and take off the tiniest of excess down here, and we'll have an absolutely precise covering, not a micron more and micron less. Now that's my tool prepared. I do have another one which I haven't got round to using, but hey, while we're here, why don't I make this one up and see what it works like. Now this is the one I bought from StewMac, and I bought it because it was stiffer, and it sits very flat, and then it takes a bit more to deform it than this one. This one is very, very sensitive. I only have to breathe on it and it started to curve, but it works. But this one is two things: it's stiffer, which I thought might be more accurate, but it's also wider, and that's for me that's a slight negative, the width. This being really thin is great for this job. However, I'm going to prepare both of them because sooner or later I'm going to give this one a road test. So I'm going to, is the length okay? Now I'll cut a bit of excess off the other end. So I'm going to plonk it down on here, get myself slightly off centre, but I'll cut off the excess. And then I'll do the same, reminding myself that this is in fact an aluminium box around the truss rod, so it's going to be quite soft, so I don't want to slice it into oblivion. And again, I can just fold that back and I've still got all the rest of this strip to work with, which is very, very inexpensive when you add it up. So now I've got this one with a lovely piece of sticky stuff on it, trying to cut the excess off. There we have it. Oh, and there's a bit of excess down the side that I just have to trim. So I know a couple of people on YouTube and my Facebook page have been sort of waiting to see this one in action, because I think those individuals have bought their own version of this. But there it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the Allen key that I would need to tune this little fella. Not that one. And I'll have it standing by, and we'll I'll demo it whilst using the other one. Okay, so this one needs an Allen key, the other one is good by hand. Alright, so there we have two tunable fret leveling tools. Inspiration for this was, I'm happy to say, a tool that you can buy online called the Katana. For boring reasons, which I've said too many times now, I was unable to use it. I don't think it was any, what's the word, outside of my control, let's say. Anyway, so I still needed a tool to do the same job, so I happened to have this lying around, so it seemed a good idea to use my own. Okay, the final thing I need for this process is a little bit of green tape, which seems to have come a bit undone somehow. Luckily I've got the end of it. Right, a little bit of this green gardening tape, not that much. I'll show you why in a minute. Okay. I'll cut it again in a second, but for now that's fine. So what am I trying to do? Okay, so I've got the neck. I'm going to sit it in a, let's put it up here so I can reach the surface. I'm going to put it in a kind of pretty much a gravity neutral position. So you've got, if I'm holding it here, gravity's bending this down here. If I hold it there, gravity's still bending it down there. If I hold it there, it's about cancelled out, the two things. And you can do it by tuning strings and watching the bend and stuff, but experience shows me it's about there. You won't, in fact, you can put that down and you won't notice any change in the note. And that's quite a good way of actually telling you where the gravity neutral position is on any guitar. It just means that the neck is both supported and dipping at the same time, and they cancel each other out. So it means that you can be fairly sure it's in workable shape. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to level these frets, and I'm going to do it in strips from further away coming towards me. I'm going to do it with the strings on, under tension as you've got it there. And how the hell am I going to do it? Well, I'm going to match the shape of my truss rod with its sandpaper. That's just now a fret leveling tool, okay? And I'm going to bend this to match the shape of this. It's microscopic, it's only a tiny bit of curve, but I'm going to match it as close as I can, and then I'm going to fret level using that. How do I match it? I get these little feet, which are, these are fashion buckle thing pins, I don't know what they call them, but they make handbag fastenings or something. Anyway, I found them online. Just basically there need to be 3 identical things. If in this case they don't quite fit, so you can get 3 other identical things. I've got there's so many things you can do. I'm deliberately not using the ones I got with the original tool I bought, you see. So I'm using 3 little domed brass nuts, and they fit nicely between the strings, and they're all exactly the same height, and they sit beautifully upon the masking tape there. Right, and all I want to do with my thumb is I'm going to just gauge if they're equidistant. Well, no, they're not, so I will move things around until they are. That, and that. That's about right. So the beautiful thing about geometry is that to replicate the curve on this neck, I don't need the whole neck, I just need 3 points. A beginning, a middle and an end. And, I think, I'll try this one, it might be better to demonstrate it. So, and of course it's not quite long enough, so let me just push these things. There you go. Okay, so I put this down and I touch the ends, and I'm moving it backwards and forwards, and I'm trying to see, is it touching all 3 equally, or is it touching just the end 2? If it's touching just the end 2, what you know, I'm trying to think of a way of exaggerating, if it touches just the end 2, it's doing that. Okay? If it touches all 3, it means that the curve of this matches the curve of the other one. It's not a good demonstration. You could do it by turning it around and drawing it, but the board's full of stuff anyway. So right now, touch the end, bang it down. What's hitting first? It's the end. That means this is straight and this one's lower. So I get my thing, I'll give up with using words, and I crank a bit of curve into this, and I click on the end, click down again, and now I think, if anything, it's now hitting the middle first before it hits the end one, and you can just feel it and you can see which ones it moves. So that means already there is just a fraction too much curve. Okay, and I'm going to make the tiniest backwards adjustment. Now this one sort of feels a bit easier to adjust than the other one. Now it's hitting all 3 pretty much simultaneously, and it's moving all 3 simultaneously. Well, certainly if I hold it at that end, it's moving these 2 as I touch it with the sandpaper. So I can say to myself, this curve now programmed into this truss rod matches the curve that this neck has, and if I want to now work the 2 together, I will get a nice even leveling action between the 2. Well, how do I do it? Well, if I'm going to use this one, I will need to pull a couple of strings out of the way to do it. One string that way, one string this way. Let's give it a go, shall we? I'm going to be adventurous. How do I pull strings out of the way? Well, this one's quite easy. I can gently drop that one off the side there, and I still need to move it a bit here, so I'm going to tie a bit of green wire around the string, and I'm going to pull it off sideways towards something. And you don't need too much tie, it just needs a bit of a hook to get it around something. And I'm going to wrap it around this volume knob, and that's just about pulled out of the way. And if I really need to yank it a bit further out of the way, I'll find something else with a bit of heft to it and put a piece of wire onto that just to give it an extra bit of oomph. So it's a little bit, this is where you've got to do a bit more kind of make do and mend compared to the aforementioned commercial tool that you can buy. But the difference between these things, of course, is this is $145 less than that. So that's, remember I've got the curve already programmed into my fret leveling tool, and now I'm going to move this one off sideways in that direction, and I'm going to hook a wire around it here, and I'm going to pull it off into this direction and hook it around the bass strings. Now what's true about this is that it is adjusting in some sense the tension slightly on the neck, but it's not so much as to make the world of difference. It's still largely under tension. Now here's the fun bit. Deep breath. We have a clear track, and we can now place our tuned truss rod tool onto the frets, and by the power of gravity alone we can just gently work up and down, work the tool up and down on this strip. We obviously kind of move it slightly side to side because we want to cover all the frets. Oh, sorry, we want to cover the whole track where the strings go. That's the most important thing. Trying to level the frets all the way across, but we really care that the frets are level where the strings sit. Now, just as a quick indicator for you, I think this is the wrong sandpaper. I think he sent me, this isn't 400. I'm sure it's not 400. Maybe it is. Maybe this other stuff is. I'm not sure. It feels a lot rougher than 400 compared to the other stuff. Anyway, what's good about it is straight away you can see it's taking metal off there. Now the first thing is, if it's matched, you want to see metal coming off most of the frets simultaneously. If it only comes off the frets at the ends, what it's telling you is you probably haven't got it tuned right, so stop, retune it. My first little scrape down here tells me it's taking metal here, 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 quite a lot here, 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 here. Right, so that's pretty consistent. It covers, the scratching so far covers all of that range, which tells me it's pretty well tuned to the curve in the neck. You wouldn't get material coming off this bigger range if it was sitting across 2 points and missing. It would just do these two end points, or if it was too curved it would just take stuff out of the middle. Okay, so it's a pretty good indication that it's tuned. What it's telling me straight away, looking from above, is the most metal is coming off here, and guess what? We predicted it, didn't we? That's the fret that rang highest out of all of them. If I'd have carried on, that would have rung high, as well as these ones up here. But I stopped there, but it's just as an indicator that what you see happening should concur with what you've observed, and it's pretty accurate. It's exactly right. So I'm going to gently continue with this, knowing that this one in the middle is pretty high, but also knowing that we have to take enough off this these frets to clean up the first couple of frets with their serious great dents. If we don't, they'll still play scratchy and look kind of worn out. So I'm using the file to run up and down and take away a lot of material where it has to be taken away, and unfortunately it's going to take a lot from these high frets, and unfortunately that's what it has to do. And there's a couple of really high ones. Now the thing is, remember, there's something you could do here. There's one approach, is that you could just carry on going until all of these frets, including the ones that still have black marker pen, have got silver scratches on top, and that will tell you you've absolutely leveled all of them, because you'll know, because you've touched all the frets, and to have touched all the frets you've brought them all down to a universal level. Problem with doing that approach here is that we may not have enough material on the frets to do it. I don't really want to go that far down if we can avoid it, but you're constantly weighing things up. You could stop now, free up these strings and test the notes. If they all play and ring clearly, you could say that's actually as much fret leveling as I need to do to play comfortably and cleanly with this action, and you're stopping at that point, even though technically there are still some unevennesses, but you're stopping at a point at which you've made it play cleanly for the action you want. What's true about that is there will be no further lowering you could do, but it will play beautifully for the action that we've set of 1.5 millimeters or slightly less on the treble side. Something that might affect that decision though is if you look back here and you go, well, there's still some pretty ugly dents in here because they're showing up as little blips of black because the black pen has gone into the crevices, if you like, and you say, well, I don't want that in there, so I'm going to still carry on going because I want those marks out. There's no point cleaning or leveling these frets if we leave the guitar with scratchy troughs around the first few frets. We might as well have not bothered almost. We haven't really done anything to improve. And we've leveled the frets a bit. We haven't cleaned up the worn out action any. So I'm carrying on a bit more. Again, hardly using any pressure. It's all gravity. And what's showing me is a lot of materials coming off those high frets that I expected. I've cleaned up the first two. The third one's still got a little bit of denting in it, but actually we could pretty much get rid of that with sandpaper. So at this point I make a judgment call to free up the strings. I'm going to gently drop them back into their homes. I'm going to unwind them here and reallocate them back into their correct slots. I'll be as gentle as I can because I want to use these strings to play with for a while, since I've just put them on and they're about £4 a set. So follow along with my fingernail, lift it gently, carefully out of the slot, drop it in place. Now, everything about this tells me this should play cleanly all the way up if we've got rid of the major unevenness, and it won't play because I've got this string tied up at the moment, so let's free that up. Yeah, so hopefully this will have been enough work to free up all the notes. There's one note in there that isn't perfect for my liking. It's right at the top. Otherwise everything else is good. So here's the bit. We go, well, we're not quite there yet. We know the one that's slightly out still is right at the top. I'm going to go through that rigmarole again. I'm going to make sure that we get that last little bit done and sorted out. Okay, so I'm going to bend this string out of the way, keep it under tension, double back. It should just about be out of the way. I will give it an extra pull using this. I have to dangle that off the edge, give it a bit of extra, or see if I can give it a bit of extra pull in some direction. Come on. You can do it. And I'll pull this one sideways as well. Again, you can lift them if you really want to. You can lift them off the saddles at the bottom, but I try not to do that because I want to keep them under sort of as much playing tension as possible. And then I'll feed this back up here. So it's a bit fiddly, and you can see you're having to go through some level to clear the way again, but we go back to it. We know that it's that top one now. I've got to do a little bit more work on, so I'm just it's going to be taking material off the rest, but I'm going to sort of concentrate on that top bit, and then I'm going to make sure it goes right to the edge and gives us the clean playing at this top end. And I'm just sort of focusing on it really, and I think with a bit of luck that should be it. Let's slack it off. So as I said, the aim of all of this is to take as little away as possible to get it playing as cleanly as it possibly can for the action that we've set. If this was a new set of frets that I just put on myself, I would know how much material there was available to play with, and I could be a lot less careful. I could take more material off and just level it all back down to a single level where all of the frets have been scraped, and I would be confident that that will play. But this is, again, taking it carefully because I don't have that much fret metal to play with. One tiny fret, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out of the way manually, the other direction this time. Use my slightly different approach. I'm just pulling it other way for a minute, and I'll just pay attention again a tiny bit to that top edge right up there, but it's very close. We are almost there. So I'm literally going to just pay attention up there, and maybe even apply just a little bit of pressure there, because we know we've got to get this down this little bit here. I can see it where it's got to take it off, and we need it to do it. That'll do. Okay, so this little bit of messing about with strings and green wire and stuff, this is the price you pay for a makeshift tool as opposed to the paid tool, but it gives you the same accurate result. There we are, done! And now this one. Done. So that's the first stretch taken care of. Now I'm going to pull the next two strings out of the way and create a gap. In a sense, this becomes a bit easier because we can now use the strings, pulling off the strings against other strings to move them off sideways. So it's sort of slightly eased up. Again, not the prettiest of techniques, but effective. It'll do the job. And I'm just hooking this green stuff around till it bites, if you like. It's just kind of a loop around it. It catches hold of it, and then I'll pull it against the lower strings and just keep everything out of the way. I'll do it properly. So you can see there is a bit of constant handling of these strings, so they will be a little tired by the time I come to play it. But now I've created a path for the middle two. The one thing that's important to do here is I'm going to retune. Okay, and I'm not going to trust that this is going to stay the same all the way across, particularly since I know already, if I'm going to move this a tiny bit, since I know already that there is a slight flare in the neck, as there are on all guitars, but it suggests to me that this may change just a tiny bit as I go across. So I feel it hitting the end here harder than it's hitting the middle. So I'm going to increase by a tiny fraction the amount of curve in this tool. I still feel like I'm hitting the end first. It's biting into the end and not doing much, so I need a bit more curve. The only downside, there you go, now I'm actually on the middle one harder than the end one, so back it off a tiny bit. So you can see how nice and sensitive it is. The only downside of using a wider tool, damn, so delicate a call this, could go the other way again. I'll finish my sentence in a minute. The downside of using the wider truss rod to do this job is that I'm in between two places here, backwards and forwardsing. I won't finish that sentence. In fact, what I'm not going to do is start it until I've got this ready. Sorry folks. Very, very difficult. It's right, got to get it right in the middle so they're all on the same track. Slack off a tiny bit. It's so precise. I mean, that's why it is precision fret leveling. I'm impressed by this. That'll do me, I think. Oh god, it's so tight. I'm impressed by the rigidity of this tool compared to the other one. It's reassuringly oh Christ, reassuringly stiff, madam. Right. I will in a short while return to, I'll leave it at that, the statement of why this one isn't quite as, it's better in this rigidity but not quite as good in another way as this one, is that when you use one like this you tend to go across in three. You describe the curve of the neck, so there's a there's a radius curve, the shape of the neck going this way, how curved it is. With this you go 1, 2, maybe 3, so you've sliced it in 3 things, so you don't make a smooth curve. With this one you probably do it in about 5, in fact you do it once for each string, and you get a closer approximation of the curve. So swings and roundabouts. So I'm going to carry on with this one, because to be honest, if I wasn't using that back in the old days, I would have done the same job with that, and you notice that is possibly nearly twice as thick again. So people fret level with these all the time, and to be honest, providing they do a couple of runs across the curve, they tend to recreate it a bit anyway. So I'm being hyper vigilant when I say this is too thick, but hey, that's me being precise. So here we go. Now I'm going to fire away, and I expect to find the same pattern continues, i.e. the really heavy ones, where the really high ones, I'll take a lot of metal off fairly quickly. Okay, I'm just going to work within this track that I've made, and the idea will be to take off these high spots and get down to a kind of relative level between them all. And what you'll find is, when you're doing this, is that the pattern on the previous strip will more than likely continue across to this strip. So that one was very high, you'd expect it, we know it will carry on across that side. The high ones up here, we expect to see it taking more metal, but it won't always be the same. Sometimes frets will be high on one side and then back to normal on the other. So don't assume it will be the same all the way across, but it often does continue. The sort of shape or the condition of the fret you've already noticed often will continue. I'm conscious of the need to make sure that the grooves are out of the top end. Make sure we've got as much levelling as we need to get at this end. And again, the same principle applies here. We're going to demonstrate or test whether we've achieved what we want by playing it. That's the sort of best way of knowing it's worked. And knowing when to stop is the important thing. Okay, so here we have our strings back in their slots. Try and keep them as clean as possible. So we're now working on the G. Tiny bit here in the middle, and it coincides again with this extra high bit here. Needs a tiny bit more taking off there. We might see the same thing with this next string, the D string. Pretty good. I'll do a little bit more in the sort of concentrating in the middle area of these two. Can I pull these? No, I'm not going to pull them sideways. It's too much stress on the string. I'll just yank them with my favourite green garden goo. Seems to work. Pull the strings together, hook it round, let it grip. The same here. Tie it on, hook it round, pull it together, hold it tight, and it holds. So my issue is a bit in the middle and maybe a little bit at the end. So trusting the tool to do some good levelling under gravity. I'm trying to avoid too much, because this truss rod doesn't quite extend the full length of this neck, whereas actually this one does. That's another downside of this one. You get a bit of a clonk where it hits the frets that it's riding up over. It's not perfect in that sense, but I guess for the flatness and stiffness you're getting a better, slightly better result on that front. What I'm seeing here is this fret in the middle is so high that it's making the one next to it, it either is already low or it's making it appear low, which is what happens. That's why it's all relative. A low fret can make the next one appear high or ring out as if it's high. In fact, the problem is the low fret. Usually, when all's said and done, the real problem is the low frets, because they are the ones that tend ultimately to set how far you're going to have to go on your fret leveling. They're your lowest common denominator, shall we say. Okay. Still a bit of still a little tiny bit of buzz in the middle that I'm going to work on. See, doing it by ear, and not giving up on it until we've got that middle section right. Again, all sort of a judgment call based on, do we have enough material left to do this? You know, we don't want to wear it away flat in pursuit of a perfect action if it just can't do it. There's no point. You'll be kind of forced to refret whether you like it or not. So I'm kind of focusing now quite heavily on this middle section. There are a good couple of frets here that are problematic, so hopefully this will take care of it. So, you know, it is a mixture of experience and practice, which is all the same thing really. You've got to keep going until you've got to trust your experience to tell you to make those judgment calls, where you're going to stop, or where have you reached a point where you've created problems you can't get out of. For me, it's not the end of the world, because I know that at the worst comes to worst, I can always refret a guitar. But hey, we're there. Done. That's good enough for me. Alright. Ow. Even my fingernails aren't cooperating on this one. Yanking it off to the side, yanking it right off the side. Okay. Let's see what we've got. Can we? Let's pull this one with this one here. I think it's just about going to work. I'll do two grabs at it. A bit here as well. So I find that for a bit of fiddling with some green wire and a bit of kind of tiny bit of inconvenience, I like the fact that I can do all of this with a homemade tool. What we're going to do, we're going to just check the tuning again for the last strip. It's really important. So we line up the little dots, the brass thingies at the right place. Check the distance between them. Get them roughly right. there and there, there and there, so it's that one to there, and then check, and I can't reach them, damn it, so bring them in the same amount. Hello. I'm testing out my newfangled super duper
banana,
double wide banana. It's done a very good job so far, and I'm just on the last stretch, and it's not as long as this one, and it's also much thicker. So, but then I was just saying on the video that even though it's thicker, it's still only half what that was, and people are quite happy to use those to level frets, so
right,
it's still not bad overall. So this is
works for you.
There's a few really bad frets on here stopping the action being any good. And if you can see, the big ones that have taken most metal off.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's come off those. But without doing that, the strings won't play at this sort of action. So, we're getting there.
Always surprises me that people have played them and they've been so uneven. I mean, I guess everybody gets used to it, probably, but...
Yeah, and they play them at a high enough action not to be bothered by it. I mean, that's the trick. You raise the action up and you won't notice that the frets are uneven. That's the beauty of raising it to a high action, but you know, it does stop you having choice about where, you know, how low and easy the action is. Yeah, you've got to be strong the higher up they are.
In.
Okay. Right, stopping there. Going to drink my tea and come back to this. See you in a minute. Okay, back again for the final bit. Did a little test. We're just a couple of scrapes short of this being done. Just a little bit of fizzing in the middle there that I can take away now, and then we'll be on our way. The next stage of the fret leveling game, but as soon as we get this done, it'll be playable and we'll be ready to go. Now that's taken a fair bit of material off, but it's had to be that way. We're going to get the playing action we want out of it, and ultimately, if by the time we've done the can this work? Yeah, by the time we've done the next stages, the reshaping and the polishing, if it just doesn't feel right, then we will be, and will always have been in a refret situation. But we're just trying to do it without that first. We've also taken away most, if not all, of the dents here, which is cool. Yep. Don't worry about the buzz, I'm hitting it quite hard. Okay, that's good. So, I haven't got the hang of moving this thing around. I need to add something to my Heath Robinson device here, and it's probably inappropriate. I need a bar. I can just go, yay, camera. Can I do it? I bet you I can without too much trouble. I'll do it in a minute. Anyway, so done, and with the new, what do we call it? What do I call it? Banana as well, and I can do a couple of things which I often forget to do. So I'm going to just brush off this thing and just get as much of the scrapings out of. You can see it's darker in the middle section where it had to do the most work. I can also, if I can find it, take my little toothbrush to it as well and just give it a, get the face the right way round, damn it, give it a little brush down. So ready for next time. I can just stick it up here, ready for next time. So we now have levelled frets, but we also have frets that are really flattened and have had loads of metal taken off them. So here comes the next bit. I'm going to gently remove the strings and flatten them out a little bit if I can, so I can get them through easy on the next go. Then I'm going to take the strings off because we don't need the neck under pressure for anything else for now, until we're ready to finally put it back together again and restring or tighten up these strings and get into playing. The next part of the process is to reshape the flattened frets into nice rounded dome shaped thingies which the guitar likes and makes the intonation work. And so we'll reshape those frets with a special tool, and then we'll polish them to a playing action. It's really only then we'll know how it feels to play this guitar and whether it's really accepted this fret leveling. I'm going to just put these off to one side because I want to use them later on, so I can conveniently just hook them up there. That was almost as if I invented these screws especially for that, which I didn't. Got me green bits of string out of the way because they're no longer needed. My other table desk becomes a bit of a junkyard during the process of doing this. I'm going to hang up this old banana with its fresh new sandpaper. Take off this fella for now because it's not necessary. I'm going to put my little feet, by the way, I cut my nails off by doing that. Put the little feet away. I can get a little bit of sandpaper here and sort out my poor little broken fingernail. Oh. Today is bonfire night, isn't it? I forgot. Stand by. Conversation may be somewhat reduced from this point onwards. Right, so let's carry on. If you see me jumping, it's because of that. The frightened kitten. Okay, so while I'm at it, let's get a little bit of solvent and clean this dust off. You can see how much metal's had to come off those frets to level them to allow us to have the playing action we want. The only question now is there enough to turn this into a nice playing guitar? I suspect there just about is, but not. They won't tolerate another fret leveling after this, which is okay. It's you know, it'll make it play for several years to come. After which, I would be looking at refretting it personally. But that's me. Okay, so we've cleaned up some of the dust. Then we need to mark off the frets again. Cover them again with black pen. Still a dent in that one. I didn't want to go further down, but it's on the G. We might just smooth it out a little bit with the sanding process. It's firework night, my mistake. I'll just get this bit done and then we'll stop, so you don't have to listen to fireworks going off. Oops, see, that's good. If you miss, you just paint black marker onto the masking tape. You're not doing it onto the fretboard itself. Okay, so next part of the game is to reshape the frets using this, I think, well, they're kind of jumbo frets, aren't they? But let's have a look and see which side works best. I'm going to work with the medium one. Okay, so the idea is we take this concave file and we work it over the top of the fret, and as it cuts off the let me just show you on the board, it's much better. I've taken a picture of that, so I don't need that. It's all stored information, doing my sort of business planning in here. Okay. I've explained this quite a few times before, but if you haven't seen it, it's always vaguely interesting. Completely tangled up in wires, so God help us. Right. Can you sort of see? Yeah. Right, so we had some frets. Really indeed. We had some frets, and we then levelled them, so we went to that. I'm exaggerating, of course, right? So we levelled some frets. A little bit. And you can see then that some of them are much flatter on top than others. Nice. I just hope it comes through the side of the shed. Alright, so that's the frets all nicely levelled. So you go, on the good side, you go, yeah, level, right? But are they beautifully humpback shaped? No. And what happens if they're not is, if this is the bridge down here and this is the nut end up here, what happens is that the intonation point, which should be right in the centre of the frets, actually moves to the forward edge, so it becomes there, there and there. And that's quite a movement. It's not huge amounts, but it's enough to slightly offset the intonation. So we need to do something to correct that. And so what we do, I keep losing my rag. I'm losing my rag. What we do is we take a single fret and we say, what are we going to do to this? Well, we're going to take our flattened off fret like this, okay, and we're going to paint the top of it with black masking tape, marker pen, which you can see we've done already. And then we're going to get a file and we're going to cut away at this fret until we take the sharp edges off, or sorry, the shoulders off. And this file, if we look at the profile of the file, it kind of looks like that. So yeah, so you can see that as we put it down onto there, scrapes away, it'll take away this. Beg your pardon, missus. Take away that. Alright, so if we do it with the magical mystery of animation, computer animation, we get the new reshaped fret. Looketh, liketh, a nice round thing. Mostly round, sorry. Screwed that up. Mostly rounded thing again, with just a little tiny bit of the marker pen still left on top. And then we go and get our sandpaper of various grades over the top of that in both directions, and we smooth that off and it becomes a lovely rounded off fret again. So that's the process. Makes sense? Yeah. Good. Now I'm going, oh shit. Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for the mess. I'm going to rebuild this camera thing and shoot the neighbours. Right. We're still working. It's working, it's going. Right. So, that first bit, the concave file here, runs over the shoulders of this fret, grinding them away, cutting them away until we're left with a nice thin line of marker pen on top, which tells us we've reshaped it, but we haven't reduced the level overall. And that's what we're aiming to do, because if we can leave a little strip of black pen on top of all of these, then we will have reshaped them all but kept the levels exactly as they were. So to save you from firework night, I'm going to do all these off camera. I'm going to listen to the radio and I'll come back when it's time to polish up the frets. See you in a minute. Okay, just doing a quick clean up of the headstock, having taken the tuners off for a minute before we get on to the next stage. So I'm now going to strike this, ignore, stop.
setting up a fire extinguisher in front of some civilians at the base. Those civilians were the guests of Colonel Davis, and included his wife. Colonel Davis told the inquest he was angry with Private Williams and thought Williams had brought disgrace to the regiment. He ordered Private Williams to be fast-marched 75 metres in his office, saying he wanted him brought hot and sweaty and possibly panting like a dog. Colonel Davis said he thought the march would last just a few minutes, when in fact Private Williams was marched around the camp for an hour in temperatures of 28 degrees Celsius.
And there were questions about why the punishment was meted out outside normal disciplinary procedures.
Yes, there were, though Colonel Davis said his orders were within Army regulations, something called AGI 67 rules, but he did say there was a grey area between marching and unfair treatment. He said he would have intervened if he saw any soldier being mistreated. He denied that after the march he then ordered Private Williams to undergo a tough gym session, but he said he wasn't surprised, and that is what happened, although he said it should have only been done by a qualified Army instructor. So Private Williams then had to run around with his arms in the air and do multiple press-ups. The inquest heard that during it, Private Williams became aggressive and was restrained with handcuffs. He subsequently collapsed and died of heat stroke. Tests later showed he had ecstasy in his body. Now, the three soldiers who actually carried out the forced march and the gym session were cleared of the manslaughter of Private Williams in 2008. This inquest is expected to run for another 5 weeks.
Duncan Kennedy. New statistics on rape prosecutions in England and Wales show wide regional variations. In Greater Manchester, the number of alleged rape cases ending in a charge was 18%. In Northamptonshire, it was 6%. Dame English Angelini wrote a report on rape prosecutions in London.
There can be many variables which might account for variations from one region to another, and I think, as we've already observed today, that what these statistics do really give an opportunity to question and to drill down beneath the figures to look at what the processes are which give rise to the differences. It would be dangerous to pay too much significance to the cause of those variables which exist. So it can be a different type of population, a very transient population, it's vulnerable by its very nature, and therefore there may be higher reporting levels, or it may have something to do with the way in which rape can be reported and how regularly it can be able to bring these matters to the attention of someone who can do something about it. And I'm not necessarily indicating that the police is an important factor. For instance, in Manchester, you mentioned, is there is a sexual assault referral centre where there are embedded lawyers and working also with the police in the police stations. So you have a situation where that specialism, along with a very holistic approach to people who report these cases, can create an atmosphere and an environment which is very supportive and encouraging. And that has a knock-on effect. It means that others feel more confident about reporting.
Given the variables, how much attention should we pay to these statistics in terms of suggesting what best practice is?
What's useful about these statistics is that they're now gathering these nationally and therefore give those who are responsible for the investigation of this crime the opportunity to compare and contrast and ask those questions of themselves as to what the differences are in each region, that very question. However, one of the issues that concerns me is that if you look at what has been counted, that's also very important. So you have, for instance, those cases which have been categorised for no crime, those which have been charged, and those which result in conviction. But there's a very significant category of cases which are disposed of by a heading of no further action, and that's a decision made by, very often, by a detective inspector in the case of reference to a lawyer. And that category can be a very significant number of cases where the case will never ever surface again.
Is there a path in Wales that you think exhibits good practice that others should follow?
Where you see, or where I saw examples of good practice is where these specialists were able to get in at the early stage people who understood, who were very well trained, who were very sensitive to the needs of complainants, and who were able to then after provide support during the process. And the process itself can be accelerated so far as possible so that there isn't this terrible delay during which time many victims will drop out of the system simply because they cannot follow the anxiety and the prospects of the case. So all of those various factors can contribute to good practice, and if you can bring that together, as well as a system within the court, where the case is presented as professionally as possible, and then you have the very best chance clearly of a fair trial.
Dame Elish Angelini. Sir David Attenborough's new BBC One series is called The Hunt. Sir David narrates the programme, which is all about wildlife, predators and prey. But Sir David can't narrate every nature documentary out there, and today's Daily Telegraph reports. But while he thinks some actors do a good job of narration, others are maybe not so good. The paper quotes him at an event last night saying this: "The point about the commentary is that it should be comprehensible and that it should fit the picture and be delivered in an authoritative way. I think it's quite a problem to take an actor and ask them to speak a commentary, because the actor's got to believe people that he knows what he's talking about, and that's quite tricky. There are some, I'm not going to name them, but I could name 3 actors or actresses who do it beautifully. But then there are others who can't carry away with, because they know they're giving a performance. It's an advantage. I'm lucky in that I have appeared so that people think I know something about what I'm talking about. Nonetheless, if I speak it, they think that at least I believe it to be true, which is the important thing." Well, Chris Watson is a sound recordist who's worked with Sir David on nature programmes for more than 20 years. What do you think?
I think David's got a very good point, and I would wholeheartedly agree with him. I think what people anticipate with narration and commentary is an element of credibility, certainly in this country, when we're being told something or listening to a commentary about a piece of behaviour or a habitat. I think, personally, anyway, I like to have confidence in that the people who are telling me that actually know what they're talking about and not just reading it from the script.
Isn't one of the problems that medical science has failed to clone, David?
Absolutely, yes. I think you're right. I mean, there are lots of others. There are lots of other scientists, naturalists working on it.
Okay, so I don't know whether I've recorded loads of stuff I didn't need to record or haven't when I did or something. Anyway, next stage, 3 grades of sandpaper. Oh, by the way, I've taken the tuners off, cleaned them up, put them back on. 3 grades of sandpaper, 600, 1200, and then a micro mesh set from 1500 through to 12,000, which is highly polishing, and a shaped block to take the pressure off my fingers. Purpose of this is to evenly sand all of these without spending any more time in one place or another. It gets really dusty and filthy, hence the tape covering up the pickups. And you need to kind of press. You want to keep the curvature of the fret, so a downward pressure is what you want, rather than just a sort of rubbing backwards and forwards to get a flat thing. It's very noisy, so I will kind of cut off at this point and come back when it's all done, luckily for you, and then we'll move on to restringing and testing this thing out. But that we'll obviously be testing it to see first of all how it plays, but also then whether these pickups are worth keeping in or whether we need to change them out. Alright, so I'll see you in a minute. Okie dokie. Oh, dust. Right, so here we are. Everything paper off, everything polished. Time to give the neck a quick oil so that it looks a bit nicer when we're playing it shortly. I'll rub it on, but I'll also make a point of getting rid of the excess. So I don't want too much on there, just want enough to darken the wood, make it feel nice. Remove, 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 and there we are. We're ready to restring and see how this plays and feels. And that'll be sort of challenge number 1, really, is if it plays and feels nice, then the frets will be okay, and we can move on to thinking about the pickups and how they sound. And that's, in a way, that's a smaller part of the job. The hard work's being done. So I'll retrieve the thingy-me-jigs. I haven't given this a clean, that's the point, what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to get my toothbrush and a cloth, and I'm going to give this a quick sluice down. Again, I'm not worried about anything to do with the intonation right now. I know it's off, probably off, given that they're all set in a funny place. So really what I'm just concerned about right now is Just giving this a quick scrub down to get rid of any dust and grime that's immediately apparent. Just give a bit of a clean, I think, otherwise it'll just look dusty and horrible forever. Not hard to do really, so you have a toothbrush handy, get in there and lift some of the ancient goo. And then a quick rub down in the towel. And it's not sparkly, it's never going to be sparkly because they're quite old, these pieces of hardware, but it's at least it's cleaner and hygienic. So stick on the stop piece, and this is a challenge. Well, it's not a challenge really, it's not that hard, but just get the strings back on nicely. Going one over and the rest under, so I should still be able to do that on this setup. Or this restringing at this point. Try not to get all this lot tangled up, it's all too easy to do. Yeah, so, sorry, not a very good camera shot there, my large hands in the way. Over the top and then under. Get it in the right slot will help. Alright, that's going nicely so far, and the bit I'm looking forward to now is that will it play okay, or are the frets too worn out to have really been able to lower the action? It would be a shame, but oh yay, come on, go in. Over the top, underneath. And get it on bridge properly. It's quite difficult to restring with used strings. They don't seem to want to behave or do anything you tell them, so which way is this going to go? Come on. So one over the top, the rest under. Almost there. Sometimes when you're restringing, you just can't get back to where it was. Can't get the exact same string reconfiguration because everything's moved a bit, so it just has to be as good as it can be. And finally, come on. Working with the very thinnest of all is the annoying bit, like that. It pings off and there's nothing you can do. Get in there, please, please. over the top if I'm lucky, and then underneath. Hooray! We're done. Okay, so there we have it. So obviously going to be lots of slack and settling in to go on, so we'll leave that for a little bit. And what we'll do is get a quick tuning off the box to set it up to begin with, to get it close anyway. Right, so what we have, I don't know if you can see, after all of that effort, maybe a couple of hours, we've now got a lovely low action guitar, which will play really well. The action here should be pretty much the same, but I can double check it. It may have moved just very slightly. So what I'm going to do is let this settle, take it inside and play it for a while, and let's just have a see whether these pickups are any good, and whether they're just worth replacing for some Wilkinson ones. Hard to know until we've given it a good go. So this is I guess the first part of this video. The second part may well show, well, it will show me having a go at the intonation. That's not yet done, and it will also show any work we're going to do to change out the pickups and put new ones in, of which I have a couple of Wilkinson ones luckily in the workshop, so if we do need to do that, we can do it without too much trouble, but of course it's an extra expense, cuts down profitability. There's a couple in there, one gold, one silver, and we shall see if we need 2 golds. There we are. You may need to raise that just a tiny fraction. Let's have a look what we've got in playing height at the moment. Inches, millimeters, 1.5. Well, I'll take it indoors, play it for a while, and then we'll see. Problem with these things as well is, unless I get some foam in there to block off all these stupid screws, you never know what it is that's making any noise. So that's becoming a bit of a regular occurrence, having to find some foam to fill these out. I need a box of foam bits. I think I had one somewhere, but I've now lost it. So that's my plan of action, is to just slice off some very small bits of foam. Good stuff, this. Can't remember where it came from, but kind of just get some little bits and tuck them in wherever they can stop the things rattling. I don't know how well you'll be able to see, but I'm just pushing them into place, and they kind of fit nicely into the slots. Actually, the intonation will change, so I'll need to move them later on, but they do. The foam drops nicely underneath or into the gaps, and it looks very tidy. But it stops the things rattling, and some of them need to be in the front rather than the back, but just expands just enough to cure the stupid buzz. You know, and if we've got buzz anywhere else, then that's fine, we deal with it, but we don't need to be having to fight the buzz in the bridge as well as anywhere else. That's just too annoying. It's slightly difficult that, yeah, make sure there's got to be enough room under there. Better when it's around the back. Becoming a bit of a trademark of mine now. I suppose there's other ways you could do it. I think people sometimes use Vaseline or stuff like that, which is a bit gooey, so I just prefer to shove a little bit of foam in there. It's my trademark anyway, and I'm sticking to it. Fiddly though. Especially if every time you lose where you put the last supply of foam, you have to cut some more. Come on. Oh. You know, your hands are a certain size and they just don't seem to do small things very well. It drives me mad sometimes. Right, one more. There you go. Tuck in there, mate. Sure, just don't do anything I'm asking you to do, will you? Alright, nearly. If when I'm doing this, if the foam sticks up at the front, I just need to make sure I cut it so that it's not so much sticking up that it touches the string, because then that's too much. Clumsy. Get in there and stay in there. Hopeless. I can't seem to do it, Captain. Get in the gap. Stay in the gap. Thank you. Right. And up she hangs. So, as lift this thing up. Apologies. So there we have it, folks. The scratch plateless V100 vintage. Nice action now, nice frets. We're going to see just how nice or not those pickups are over the next short while, and then make a decision on what to do with them afterwards, whether they need to be binned and replaced, or whether we can live with them. Who knows? But anyway, there we go. Thanks for sticking it out with me today, and I will rearrange this camera thing so it looks a little bit better, but there we are. Vintage V100, everybody likes them. Good guitars.